So that got way out of hand. Right now, the Catholics Please Log Off video is at like 13,000 views, and has now become the most, needlessly, become the most like successful thing I've ever done on YouTube. I don't like the word successful for something like this, but relevant maybe. You know, whatever. It's my third time trying to record this video to kind of address a little criticism and clarify what I was really trying to say in that video, and you know, each time I feel like I keep bloating and I keep just, or I don't know, I'm just not satisfied. So maybe I'll miss certain points and I'll regret them later, and I'll probably be really active in the comments if enough people see that one. But you know, here goes. This is tomorrow me, or this is next day me. I moved in a 24-hour period. I moved. So yesterday's recording had a couple things missing, a couple holes, but it wasn't really that bad. I'm not going to bother re-recording everything. So I'm just going to be popping in, you know, here and there to offer some additional points. Also, I'm sorry if I'm reading off of the. I typed, you know, I wrote everything out ahead of time, you know, to be responsible. So I'm sorry if I'm just like, you know, screenager, just kind of reading off of this a lot, for a lot of the time. To begin, most of the criticism that I got in the Catholics Please Log Off video was over things that I said in the first half, which indicates to me that some did not watch the entire 26 minutes. But I'm absolutely not the type of person to uncritically brush off criticism based on this assumption. So I'll address just a couple of things I heard. That's clearly outdated. I'll be addressing a lot of things. After some rewatching, I now realize how flawed the first 10-ish minutes of the monologue were, and how I overemphasized certain points. To sum up the mistakes in the video from my end, I think what happened is a strongly anti-technology sentiment, which I personally harbor. If I had the willpower to be a Luddite, whatever they're called, I might just do it, right? Basically, this sentiment, this anti-technology perspective, took on a Catholic vocabulary, right? It's because that's kind of what I have experience with. And thus, I kind of overemphasized the perspective and suggestions I intended to offer. The unfortunate truth is that very few people have healthy relationships with devices, social media, the internet, so on. Catholics, from my experience, do have an edge up. We have prayers, disciplines, traditions that can aid us in the fight against total mental preoccupation. That being said, those who are able to rein in their phone usage often cannot sustain that long term. I'm in this camp. People that I know personally are in this camp. There's also an issue of Catholic, like, AI and Catholic tech kind of being pushed a bit too much. And a lot of the faith, at least how it's presented by more mainstream creators online, is starting to become this very homogenous, very millennial gray, very tech company, just kind of filled with platitudes, very industrial. It's becoming something that's not a living organism, but a producer of capital. The everything machine it sucks your life away, and if your faith becomes too intermingled with that, well, then your faith is going to go sour. Additionally, I'm absolutely the type of person to begin by saying I understand something is nuanced, only to proceed to talk about it with zero nuance. Hyperbole is a genuine character flaw of mine, and I recognize that, and I need to be more responsible with my tone and the way I say things, especially with a platform like this. It was really one sentence that threw off the meaning of the entire first section, and it was when I said, kind of blanket statement, that we shouldn't go about religion in the postmodern apologetic way. That wasn't the wisest. To be clear, when I say postmodern in this sense, I don't mean like actual postmodernism, like, you know, neo-Marxist extensive critique, like that kind of thing. More importantly, I mean it in the sense of basically atomizing every single truth claim to its smallest components, to its finest theses. First, I blundered in properly defining the scope of this complaint, yet I nevertheless did attempt to define it. In the beginning of the video, I plainly state my thesis that any well-meaning, devout Catholic, end quote, should stay away from social media. This category assumes a few things, the most important of which is that this individual knows their faith well and practices it in a real-life community. However, as I presented my point of view, I expanded its scope, perhaps unnecessarily, by discussing a wider audience, stating that, quote, regular people, unquote, are harmed by apologetics, which is just not true in such a generalizing way, and it was irresponsible. Proper regulation of Catholic content consumption is going to vary from person to person. I have a quite critical stance that passed, I guess, a certain early point of inquiry into the faith, most people should do away with the online content and focus on prayer, study, and parish life, including enrolling in OCIA or just reading the Bible and the Catechism, so on. It is true that many Catholics, even pious ones, do not know their faith very well, and apologetics has its role in mending this situation. But I would argue that the volume of information and frequency of consumption can be of concern, considering the practically infinite nature of the internet. As implied, one's position in their walk of faith matters as well. Too much apologetic content for an inquirer can lead them to a breaking point of indecision, weighing too many simultaneously contradictory claims from different sects and denominations, what we might call analysis paralysis. And that sounds like a general complaint against all sort of Christian or religious apologetics, but when you realize, at least in the Christian sphere, almost everything is measured up to the Catholic faith, because there's this perception that the Catholic Church posits the most. I don't necessarily think that that's true, but that's the perception. That's the predominant narrative, and so a lot of apologetic content in Christian apologetic content, in the Christian sphere, is typically measuring things up against the Catholic Church, against the Pope, against the dogmas, so on and so forth. On the opposite end, too much for an already well-off Catholic can be scandalous, potentially tempting one to heresy or apostasy if they are exposed to and then overly preoccupied with the flaws of the Catholic Church, often stemming from a sort of perfection spiral that begins with good conscience efforts to understand what the Church professes better. This complaint includes Sedevacantists, defectors to Orthodoxy, even some classical Protestants as well, or more or less serves to critique the possibility of kind of going down that path. It is legitimately a sin against faith to, over-investigate. To focus back in on the postmodern apologetic stuff, rejecting the postmodern argumentative method is simply to point out its absurdity. Apologetic content online is how most converts are finding the faith. I recognize that. I'm in that camp. But in an ideal world, this process of conversion would hopefully be detached from these things. It would be a lot more IRL. Practicing Catholics would zealously yet prudently represent their faith and make deeper relational impacts on those around them, inviting them to Mass and adoration, discussing what they believe, so on, instead of what seems to be a preoccupation with the online world and its baggage that many of the most devout souls suffer from. I understand that this is simply preference, if not a complete fantasy. Speaking pragmatically, an objectively higher number of souls are reached via social media content than strictly face-to-face interaction. I never, at any point, said or implied the only way to be Catholic is to be born Catholic, but I can understand how, again, coming off too strong on certain points can lead one to this conclusion. Pointing out the hereditary nature of religion was, again, merely a criticism or a pointing out of the ridiculousness of the postmodern coming to faith. Beyond this, my complaints about social media apologetics are rooted in the culture surrounding them. I make this abundantly clear. Here is a reply I left for a commenter who was seeking clarification about my position. Essentially, he said that he was a convert and he had largely come to faith, again, through apologetic stuff and realizing Protestant arguments were weak and so on and so forth. And what I replied was, hey, I'm happy to hear about your story. God bless you and welcome home. Apologetics are not inherently bad. I stated in the video that despite my complaints, I recognize the value of defending the faith, and I recognize the conversions stemming from apologetic content. My real issue is primarily cultural. In my roughly 3 to 4 year faith journey thus far, I've seen a kind of descent into madness in the apologetic sphere. Audiences and creators alike are becoming increasingly toxic in their behavior and conduct online. Additionally, less and less qualified people are willing to throw their hat in the ring and stand up for the faith when they should be focusing on their interior and sacramental lives, or at minimum pairing their apologetic endeavors with serious theological study. Younger apologists tend to irresponsibly use short-form content and take on a needlessly confrontational tone towards others. Immature viewers tend to adopt this attitude and push it even further, ranging from debate me bros to groypers to who knows what. It's especially bothersome when this manifests in real-world interaction. I'm deeply involved in ministry at a Catholic university, which I've talked about, and have encountered a handful of people who lean into it a bit much. I don't want to leave Mass and talk about the Photian schism. I want to know how you're doing, where you are at in your spiritual life and your vocational discernment, so on. Overconsumption of apologetic content leads people to focus on the wrong things. Custody of mind is of utmost importance. I touch on this later in the video. As with anything, some creators are responsible, some are not. Some of the audience is responsible, some are not. Nothing I say here is all-encompassing, but there's definitely trends I've noticed in my time online. As far as the power of voice and inheritance stuff, those don't make lay apologetics bad either. Just making observations. The way we do religion in contemporary times is fascinating. It's just a fraction of everything I have to say on the matter, but I've expressed the most important concerns, God bless. To expand on some of that and to focus on the, I guess the other half, on content creation, it seems that an unusually large amount of Catholics think anyone with any degree of understanding in the faith can act as a spokesperson for and a defender of the Church, or at minimum that anyone can be an online manifestation of it via more entertaining, less intellectually rigorous content. I would argue that too many average Catholics are making accounts and posting online unnecessarily. It's also the quality of this content that's of concern, and obviously when you have inexperienced people making these things, it's kind of only going to get worse and worse. But this sort of sentiment, this feeling, this geist that every Catholic needs to have an online presence is contributing to increasing anti-intellectualism within the church, just within the faith in general. And part of this is kind of in line with what I was talking about earlier, right? That homogenous, consumeristic Catholicism. Couple that with this sort of bottom-up aspect, every single person feels like they need to say something. It's making the faith stupider. I don't mean to be crude or harsh in that way, but it's an observed trend. A couple of just closing thoughts. As I stated early in the video, everything on this channel is implicitly informed by my Catholic identity, even when I seemingly detach from it or talk about things not particularly relevant to it. I refer to it as the insatiable urge to mention I'm Catholic, yet in reality it's more just bringing up relevant examples from my preeminent belief system and life philosophy. And for the one person, surprisingly the only one, who said the video could have been shorter. So true, King. I'm sorry. You're correct. I really did not need to go on for 26 minutes. My bad, okay? I'm trying to talk with a little bit of brevity here. Please forgive me. I'm sure I'm missing something that's on my mind. This is a serious thing, right? I was just kind of throwing my thoughts into the void, but a huge audience was attracted from that, and now there's like a legitimate degree of social responsibility that I have, and so I need to try to be as transparent as possible, right? And I don't want to come off as backtracking everything that I said, right? I still firmly believe that Catholics need to get off the internet by and large, but I need to be responsible with expressing that, and I need to very clearly define what I'm talking about, and so I hope that offered some clarity. Now I'm going to get into the more usual routine. What's the lesson here, right? Earlier this summer I was thinking, I can't remember how I got there, but I was kind of upset and reflecting a little bit on why I hadn't been finishing video projects, right? Because my oh my, if you knew how many video projects I've attempted over the past 2, 3, 4 years that just haven't, manifested at all. I get scripts halfway done, or I get tired, or I lose interest in a topic, and it goes away, right? I kid you not, I'm sitting on a 20-page, basically completed script for a video. I've been sitting on this for a year, maybe a little longer than that. And I haven't made it. I haven't made that video. That's for, and this is all stuff from my other account, because my other account was my YouTube channel, right? I guess, we've uprooted that. But I'm sitting on this script, and, I've been working on it for 2.5 years, and a lot of that's sporadic. You hyperfixate on it for a couple weeks, and then you forget about it. You kind of throw it away, whatever. It's on the back burner. You don't give it much thought, and then you come back to it. The most recent spell of that, which again has lasted probably a year, has been out of a very specific kind of fear with the scope of the project, which is a huge one, is a huge thing I'm trying to do. There is demanded of me a certain academic precision that I was afraid I could not deliver. Having worked on the script and done so much research so sporadically, I hadn't really been very diligent in gathering resources, and I can't even remember or even find where half the information on those Google Doc pages even comes from. I don't even know where it is. The Aether may as well have whispered it to me in a dream. And so I guess, and I started to develop a very specific fear that some sort of mega nerd, and I mean I'm talking real big nerd here, was going to just chastise me and correct me about it, and I was going to just kind of be embarrassed and lose my mind. And the bigger picture of that, the bigger implication of that, is this extremely deep fear of criticism that I have. And you know, I took the time to self-reflect just a few months ago and think about it more, and it's, you know, wow, I'm really afraid to be criticized by people, and I don't take criticism well. Why am I like this? What's going on here? And again, it's everywhere, right? It's in my spiritual life. I wish I was better at listening to directors and people like that. It's in my academics, it's in my social life. The pertinent example here is creative-ish work, videos, and just this fun stuff that I like to do, that I wish I could do more, that I could do better, but I can't. And so kind of right then and there, I decided, you know what, enough of this crap. I'm going to try to get that video done. I'm going to finally slay the beast, you know, and I'm going to, in the meantime, you know, as I'm working through that, I'm going to have a sort of a yap channel. That's what this is. It's a yap channel, and that was an idea that had been on my mind for a while, and I hadn't really acted on it yet. It had been on my mind for months, because I have a lot of musings, I have a lot of thoughts, and maybe not all of them are worth hearing or sharing necessarily, but it's good to just get them out of my head. And so that's what I've been doing for a month, at least trying to do for a month now. I've been making these, and I've been actually putting in the work on other scripts and things like that, and who knows, maybe I'll finally, for once, post a video on my other account that's not a school assignment, that's my own free will. And that's what this foray into video making has really been about, right? It's been about, I have a lot of things I wish I could express, there's a lot of cool things I wish to make, and fear of criticism is holding me back from doing so much of that. And if I'm afraid of criticism, if I have this great of an inability to be criticized, and to, if my perfectionism and my neuroticism is that, you know, sky high, to where I can't actually make anything of value manifest in my life, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to make anything of value if I don't face the music. And did I, right? I mean, a lot of people, I will say, I'm very grateful, because a lot of people seem to share the sentiment of the video. I got comments from all sorts of types. I had like 2-3 Catholic influencers, whoever these people who I throw up on the screen, and then this guy. Get a load of this guy. Anyways, point being is that the response was still positive. But there was plenty of criticism too. There's plenty of valid criticism, valid backlash. I mean, I'd say it was probably maybe about 20% of people didn't really like it, 10% of people, you know, in the range. It could be deflating that, I don't know, but I could be overinflating it too. I have no idea. But I did, you know, I made something, I expressed a thought, and I was criticized for it, and I took in that criticism and have, you know, settled it within myself, and my perspective has changed a little bit. It's opened my mind more. And I mean, are these things not the exact goal, exact purpose of doing all of this, right? This is exactly what I've set out to do. And, you know, I figured if any video was going to catch on, it was going to be that one. It's a contentious topic, irrespective of about online arguing, right? And I'm not trying to argue with people, but it's, you know, of course, there's going to be a lot of opinions about that.